Broadcasting live from Jackson and State in Chicago's Loop, it's Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment.
You're listening to RDSE, where sports and showbiz.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard, presented by RDSE. I am your host, Michael Lyons, and this is going to be the last show of the semester, so I just want to say, everybody that's been listening in, thank you. I mean, if you haven't followed the Instagram yet, at the Beyond the Scoreboard Instagram, we do weekly awards, so if you want to keep up with how I'm viewing the NBA season, I'll probably post a little bit more during the break, but we'll be back in January talking about the NBA, but let's get right into it. This is going to be a shorter episode today, so we're not going to cover all the games. We're going to cover a couple things. NBA Cup started this week. If you're not sure, the NBA Cup is in its second season. Last season, we saw the Los Angeles Lakers win it, and now it just started up on Tuesday night where we saw the Orlando Magic win a game, the New York Knicks win a game, the Sixers and the Hornets both lost. They are in East Group A along with the Brooklyn Nets, who haven't played a game yet. In East Group B, we saw Milwaukee beat Toronto, Detroit beat Miami, and then Miami lose to Detroit, Toronto lose to Milwaukee, and Indiana didn't play. In East Group C, we saw the Hawks beat the Celtics, and then the Cavs, Bulls, Wizards have not played a game yet. Now, how the NBA Cup works is there's three groups. They play a certain amount of games, and then whoever is leading the group at the end of those games moves on to the semifinals. And then they get two wild card teams who finish second, and they had the most wins. So I'm going to make my picks for the Eastern Conference, and then we'll move over to the Western Conference, and then we'll talk about how it would work in the wild card playoff kind of bracket they have. In East Group A, I see the New York Knicks single-handedly winning this division, or winning this group, I guess. Orlando still struggling without Paolo Banchero. He's going to be out for a couple more weeks. Philly is just so, you never know what to expect from them. I mean, Jared McCain had a big game against New York, but you can't expect that to win you some games. So Philly, I mean, if they're healthy, I guess you could maybe pick them, but it's all about health and Paul George and Joel not playing the other night. Tyrese Maxey's out for a couple weeks, so I'm not picking them, and I'm not picking anybody else in that group to move on. In East Group B, we had, as we know, we had the Bucks, Pistons, Heat, Raptors, Pacers. The Bucks are my pick. They need to make it out of this group to make this season worthwhile to start because it's been so rough for them. And then I'm going to pick the Pacers as the team that makes it out of East Group B at the second spot. They were in the finals last year of the NBA Cup, so they know how to play in this. They know these winner-go-home games. Compared to some of these other teams, the Pistons have been fun to watch this to start this season. If it's not the Pacers, I can see the Pistons being in there, but I'm just going to go with the Pacers being a little bit more experienced. Miami, we know they never really take the regular season seriously, and I don't think they're really going to take the NBA Cup seriously. And the Raptors, they're a competitive team, fun team, but they're just not going to beat some of these teams in their group. And then East Group C, I'm also going to see two teams coming out of this. The Atlanta Hawks, who are above at the top of the group right now with the one win, are going to fall to the third seed, I feel. The Bulls and the Wizards are also going to miss. And then it's going to be Boston and Cleveland. Now, I think Cleveland will win the group, and I think Boston will finish second. So I think Boston, so in the East, we'll have Cleveland, Boston, Indiana, Milwaukee, and the Knicks as the five teams coming out of the Eastern Conference. Now to the Western Conference, Group A, which is one of the probably second toughest group. You got Portland, who has been very competitive this year. They beat Minnesota in their first game. So they're 1-0. Minnesota's 0-1, and then the Clippers, Kings, and Rockets have not played a game yet for the group. Group B, we see Phoenix, Utah, OKC, the Lakers, and the Spurs. This is the toughest group, and honestly, the Western Conference groups are so tough and so tough to pick, because then Group C, you have Golden State, Dallas, Denver, New Orleans, and Memphis. All super competitive teams, all teams you could see winning this. My picks, I want to pick my Kings, but we're out without Malik Monk right now, so 2 weeks, that's a couple games. We're gonna lose a couple of the games, I think. My pick for Group A is gonna be the Minnesota Timberwolves, and then that's it. I'm not picking anybody else coming out of this group because Group B and Group C are just so stacked. For Group B, I'm going to pick the OKC Thunder to win the group, and I'm going to pick the Los Angeles Lakers to place second and move into the playoffs of the NBA Cup. As I said before we really dived into this, the Lakers won the cup last year. They beat the Pacers. They know about this cup. LeBron wants to win this cup. LeBron and AD, not many teams can beat that, especially if they're cooking. For Group C, this is really tough. I'm going to pick 2 teams out of this group. I'm going to pick the Denver Nuggets and the Golden State Warriors. Now, I know Dallas is technically a better team than Golden State, but Golden State getting that win over them in Game 1 of the group over the Mavericks is big. That's why I'm picking them. Denver, I think they'll probably sweep. If not, they'll lose 1 game maybe to Dallas. But I think Golden State and Denver move on. So then in the West, it would be Minnesota, OKC, the Lakers, Golden State, and Denver. Now, who I'm picking to win this whole thing? I'm picking... Ooh, this is tough. I think just because the Cavs have had such a strong start to the season, it's hard to go against them. I do like Milwaukee. New York, if they could get some bench help, maybe. In the West, I mean, Minnesota is always tough playing Anthony Edwards and OKC. I don't think OKC will win. OKC, without 3 centers on their roster, running out lineups with their tallest player being 6'6" and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. They did beat the Denver Nuggets, though, with that lineup. So you never know. Thunder team is super competitive. Always have been, always probably will be, especially Mark Jones, who was on the call for the Denver Nuggets, OKC Thunder, he put it best. They're all guys at the same age, and they all just want to win. And if you know about the Thunder, they're dogs. They bark after every game. They bark whenever there's a big play. They're just a fun team to watch, and they're going to be one of the powerhouses in the West for the coming years. And it's just going to be tough for them right now, seeing that no Chet, no Isaiah Hartenstein, no Jalen Williams, not J-Dub, but Jalen, backup center. I think out of the West, I could see Denver or the Lakers making to the finals. I think the Lakers could be the best bet to make to the finals, but I'm picking the Denver Nuggets to make it to the final of the Emirates NBA Cup, and I'm picking Cleveland, and then I'm going with the Denver Nuggets to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Cup. Now that we have covered the NBA Cup, we're going to look over the NBA standings so far this season, because I've been wanting to the last couple of episodes, but time constraints really haven't been able to get to. I'm going to cover teams. I think I'm going to cover every team's schedule, and then or their record, and then I think I'm going to cover if they're going to be buyers or sellers later on in the season. So we'll start with the Eastern Conference. Obviously, the only perfect team, 13-0 Cleveland Cavaliers, sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference. I think they'll win 2 to 3 more games, and then they'll lose a game. I'm not looking at their schedule in front of me right now, but that's just what I'm guessing. And I think they'll stay at the top of the East most of the season. I don't think they will be buyers, though, at the trade deadline or before the trade deadline. I think they really like their team, and we still haven't even seen them fully healthy because Max Strus isn't even back yet, and they're playing like this, averaging the most points per game in the Eastern Conference and one of the better defenses in the league. But I think they'll stay at the top of the Eastern Conference, but I don't see them, once it gets to playoff time, winning the Eastern Conference. I could see them losing in the second round. I think first round they'll sweep or maybe win in 5 games, but then they'll play a tougher opponent, and they've shown in the last couple of playoffs that they haven't really shown up in the playoffs, but you never know. So Cleveland, I don't think they will be buyers, but I think they will stay at the top of the Eastern Conference the whole season. Now the Boston Celtics, who are in second place, 10-3, I think they will stay around that 2-3 range. Obviously, they're struggling right now without Kristaps, and they've lost a couple games. Warriors they lost to, Cavs they lost to, and I'm not exactly sure who their third loss was to, but 2 tough teams, 2 teams that are really playing out of their mind to start this season. Don't think they will be buyers, though. I like their team. Keita getting a lot of minutes, and then once Kristaps starts, just move him to the bench, and then the bench unit is pretty much full. So they're not going to be buyers. And now we see at the third place spot in the East, which is still surprising to me because when I've watched them recently, they've struggled. In their last 10 games are 5-5. 7-6 on the season is the Orlando Magic. Now, they're without Paolo Banchero right now, without Wendell Carter Jr. right now, and yet they're still figuring out how to get a couple wins out. They're on a 4-game winning streak right now, but it just doesn't feel like they're a team you have to worry about. They're struggling to score. KCP has finally started to come to his own in Orlando. I don't think they will be buyers, though, unless you see a big injury. But I like their team. I like the young depth they have. Jet Howard giving a lot of minutes. Tristan Da Silva's giving some good minutes. Obviously, Anthony Black is having a good season. I think they'll fall a little bit in the next couple of games to the 5 to 6 seed, but I think they'll stay in a playoff spot, not a play-in spot. Number 4, the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference right now is the 5-6 New York Knicks. Now, the thing with the Knicks is they have no bench help. Miles McBride is their only real scorer off the bench right now, and he's just not giving them enough. I think you could see them buying later on in the season toward the trade deadline, trying to get some bench depth, but they just don't have that many picks. They don't really have anything they can trade away unless they're going to trade away somebody like Tyler Kolek or Ariel Hakparty. So I could see them buying just because they have such a strong team in the starting lineup. It's just they need help on the bench, because if they get a bench, they're probably the most well-rounded team in the Eastern Conference besides Boston Celtics. They just don't have that bench help right now, and you could see them maybe buying. I don't think they will. I don't think they really have much to offer teams. But if somebody's selling a solid bench guy for really low, I could see the New York Knicks really swooping in to snag. And I think they'll stay around the 4 seed to the end of the season, but in the playoffs, if they stay at the 4 seed, that means they would play like the Pacers. Right now, I mean, I would pick the Pacers just because of the bench, which now will move to the 5th seed, Indiana Pacers at 5-6. I think they're in the perfect spot they want to be at. It's just they need Tyrese Haliburton to start picking things up, and they've played some tough teams to start this year, 4-6 in their last 10 games. Nothing crazy there, but Indiana, I don't see them buying. I don't see them selling. They made their big move last year getting Pascal Siakam, and they just need to get him the ball a little bit more, get Tyrese Haliburton rolling a little bit. I think they'll stay above a play-in spot in a guaranteed playoff spot. Now, to a team that has kind of surprised a lot of people and why they're 5-7 is the Chicago Bulls at the 6th seed. There's a couple teams in that 5-win, seed. So in the next coming days, any of these teams could jump. But Chicago Bulls right now sitting at the 6th seed. They are not a playoff team, not a guaranteed playoff team. At most, they can maybe sneak into the play-in, but I'm picking some other teams over them. I think they'll fall to the 11-12 seed by the end of the season, and I think they need to sell. This is not a Bull, like, if you're a Bulls fan, you need them to sell just so, and you need to fire Billy Donovan and get some young, so your young guys can play. Billy Donovan didn't play Dalen Terry his rookie year. Billy Donovan didn't play Julian Phillips his rookie year. Hasn't really played Modest Buzelis his rookie season. And Julian Phillips has looked good. Dalen Terry has looked all right. I mean, nothing crazy there. Sellers, I could see them moving on from Zach LaVine as their big piece, Vucevic, and, I mean, maybe you could see Josh Giddey get moved because maybe he doesn't really fit with their timeline that they want to build with a new coach, but I think it really depends on if they bring in a new coach. Now to the play-in spots, the Atlanta Hawks at 5-7. I've liked watching the Hawks play this to start this season. Onyeka Okongwu has really been killing it for them, and I think if they're going to trade away anybody, it has to be Clint Capella and move Onyeka into the starting lineup. I don't think they'll be sellers. Buyers maybe on the bench side, but starting lineup, I don't think they'll make many moves at all. And I think they will stay in that top of the play-in 7-8 seed. So that's my take on the Hawks. For the Brooklyn Nets, who are at the 8th seed, another 5-7 team, this is going to be a selling team. By the trade deadline, you're going to see a lot of these pieces get moved. Cam Johnson should get moved. Dorian Finney-Smith should get moved. I mean, Dennis Schroeder could get moved. Nick Claxton, maybe. You could see these guys get moved, and I think it'll be a big shakeup in Brooklyn, but I could see it happening. Teams don't really trade away that many players, so if they're really going to trade away anybody, Cam Johnson and probably Dorian Finney-Smith will get traded away. But I think they've been super competitive to start the season. Jordi Fernandez is doing a great job over there. The only Spanish head coach in the league right now. I like what he's building over there in Brooklyn, but I don't like him enough to make the playoffs or make the play-in. I think they will fall to probably the 11 to 13 seed in there with the Bulls. So that's what I think. I think they'll sell at the trade deadline. Dorian Finney-Smith, I would love for him to get moved to the Sacramento Kings. We need some defense, but we'll talk about the Kings in a little bit. At the 9th seed, we got the Miami Heat. They're not going to make any moves at the trade deadline, and they'll probably stay in that play-in spot. Nothing to really talk about with them. The Detroit Pistons at the 10th seed, 5-8. I don't think they will buy. I don't think they have enough to move on to buy anybody. But I could see this team making the playoffs. I was optimistic at first to start this season. I thought they were going to be another J.B. Bickerstaff kind of just moves in and they go through the same struggles they did last year with Monty, but his dress code policy has seemed to work. What he's doing as a coach is working, and I like this Detroit team to make a play-in spot. Not the playoffs, but I like them to make the play-in spot. Hornets, 4-7. I think they'll stay at that 11-10 seed. I think them and the Pistons will have a really big fight at the end of the season trying to get that last play-in spot. I don't think they will buy. I don't think they will sell. I think they want to keep LaMelo, Brandon Miller, Trey Mann, Miles Bridges. I think they want to keep all those guys together for a couple seasons, see how it goes. So nothing much there. I think they'll stay around where they are right now. Now the Milwaukee Bucks, they can't really make any trades this season. I mean, unless you're going to move on from some guys you signed in the offseason, but I don't see them doing that. But I do see them jumping up. Maybe they need to make a coaching trade or a coaching move. Maybe Doc Rivers needs to be on the move. But I think they will move up into a playoff spot because, I mean, right now they're only a game back from the playoffs, really. A game and a half back from the playoffs. So they can make that ground up, especially with the Magic are probably going to lose some games coming up. Bulls are going to fall. The Bucks are still going to be in that playoff spot. Not play-in, playoff. Wizards 2-8. Now we see a kind of a fall off in the Eastern Conference. The final three teams, Washington, Philly, and Toronto. I think Washington and Toronto will stay at the bottom. Toronto could move on from guys like Jakob Poeltl at the trade deadline. Maybe RJ Barrett. I mean, I don't really see him moving. I think he likes being in Toronto. I think they like him in Toronto. So I think the only move you could see them making is Jakob Poeltl. The Wizards, I think they need to trade away Jordan Poole, and I think they need to trade away. I think they're going to trade Jonas Valanciunas away as one of their pieces they move on from. But then I think they will also move on from either Jordan Poole or Kyle Kuzma. One of those pieces will also get moved, and Jonas Valanciunas. 76ers, they're not going to buy. They're not going to sell. They need to make a play-in spot to at least have a playoff hopes, but injuries-wise, they could stay out of the playoffs, and I wouldn't be surprised at them even missing a play-in spot. It's tough to say just because they have so much star power, but I think they'll make the play-in, but I wouldn't really be surprised if they miss. In the Western Conference, OKC 10-2 at the top of the standings. They're not going to make any moves. They're going to stay at the top of the West this whole season. I mean, in the next couple of weeks, I could see them moving down a little bit just because of the injuries, but once they get all their guys back, this is the best team in the Western Conference, and they're going to show it, and they're going to be the number one seed at the end of the year for the Western Conference. For the Golden State Warriors at the 2 seed, 9-2, I think they'll fall a little bit. Not going to make any midseason trades. I think they'll fall to the 5-6 seed. They're playing really, really strong this season. Buddy Hield's having an amazing year. Love to see it. Ex-Sacramento guy, but love seeing it out of Buddy. Golden State got their new Splash brother. The 3 seed, Phoenix Suns, 9-3. I don't believe they will make any trades at the trade deadline or before the trade deadline, and I think they'll stay within that 3-4 seed, which they're sitting at right now. I mean, you can't argue against Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. 4 seed Denver Nuggets, they're also not going to make any moves. They really like their team, and they're going to jump up. 2 seed, I could see them finishing it in right behind the Oklahoma City Thunder. 5 seed Houston Rockets right now. I think you'll see them dip a little bit toward midseason, and I don't think they will make any moves. They got a lot of young guys. I think they want to keep a lot of those young guys. I mean, maybe you could see them moving on from a bench guy, but maybe like Cam Whitmore, someone that hasn't really got a lot of playing time for them. People that are struggling for playing time. I mean, I could see somebody on that team requesting a trade and then moving on, but I don't expect them to make any big moves. The 6 seed Los Angeles Lakers are always buying if they're in the playoff spot. If they're contending for a championship, you'll always see the Lakers buy. Don't really think, I mean, they could. I'm not expecting any big moves. Maybe you could see Jared Vanderbilt get moved just because hasn't played for them really. And maybe they'll trade him in another big contract like Gabe Vincent to try and get a third, fourth star in that starting lineup. So Lakers, I think they will buy in. I think they will jump a little bit to the 5-4 seed in that range. Now, in the play-in spots right now, we have the Grizzlies, Kings, Clippers, and Spurs. Grizzlies at 7-5. They're not going to make any moves, and they will stay in the play-in. This Grizzlies team is fun to watch when Ja Morant is playing. When Ja Morant isn't playing, they don't really have a lot of momentum. They kind of lack some. They lack some oomph, kind of, with that starting lineup. I mean, Desmond Bane was also out for right now, so I think the Grizzlies will stay in the play-in spot, but I don't expect them to make the playoffs. The Sacramento Kings, my Sacramento Kings at the 8 seed, we're not going to make any moves at the trade deadline or before it, but I think we will still make the play-in. I'm not super hopeful that we'll make the playoffs, but, I mean, we got DeMar, We got De'Aaron. If the game is close in the play-in, you could see us jumping into that playoff spot and giving one of these tough guys, top-tier teams, a run for their money in the playoffs. Clippers at 6-6. I also think we'll stay. Actually, when Kawhi gets back, you'll see them jump into a playoff spot. They'll get that last guaranteed playoff spot at the 6th seed, I believe. I mean, they're really competitive right now. They have a lot to prove. I mean, some of these guys on their team, Kevin Porter Jr. didn't really play much last year. I think he played overseas. Kai Jones is struggling with some stuff in the media. They have a lot of guys that need to prove themselves. Norman Powell is having a most improved player candidate of the year, and he'll probably win it by the way he's playing to start this season. So I think they'll stay there. You could see them buying in on somebody, but I don't expect them to make any big moves. The Spurs at 6-6. I was talking about this with somebody else the other day, and the Spurs, I could see them making the play-in spot. There's just some teams underneath them that's tough to say if they'll make it. Just because, like, Minnesota's going to move up, Dallas is going to move up, and then that kind of just pushes San Antonio down. So maybe San Antonio and Sacramento or Memphis are fighting for that last 2 spots in the play-in this coming season. I could see that happening. I do think the Spurs will maybe make the... It's tough to say with them just because Vic is so young, but they do have Chris Paul, and he always elevates teams once he gets there. Pop, praise out to Pop, had a stroke before their game that one Saturday. Hopefully he's doing good. He's supposed to come back pretty soon, I believe they said in the media, but I don't think the Spurs will make any moves. I think they'll stay around the 10-11 seed, fighting for that play-in. Timberwolves will jump up, not going to make any moves. Mavericks will jump up, not going to make any moves. They'll probably finish in the top 5. Maybe one of those guys will get pushed to the play-in, or the Rockets or the Lakers will get pushed to the play-in. Portland Trailblazers, I think, are going to be a team that sells heavy at the trade deadline. I mean, I could see Robert Williams III get traded. I could see Jeremy Grant get traded. I could see Anthony Simons getting traded. They just have so much depth, and they just need to, like, consolidate it into some picks because they're not fighting for a playoff spot. They're not fighting for a play-in spot. They're a fun team to watch. Delano Banton could also get moved. So this will be one of the teams you'll see have the biggest changes at the trade deadline. Jeremy Grant could be a guy that the Lakers look at to try and trade for. I mean, he fits a Lakers guy that they would trade for at the trade deadline. The Jazz, Lauri Markkanen could get moved. I don't think he really wants to leave Utah. I don't know why he would want to stay there, but I think he could get moved. The Pelicans, they're also a team that could jump up, but they're having a really tough start to the season, and injuries are just plaguing their season, and I think they'll stay out of the play-in and out of the playoffs, and you could see maybe Trey Murphy getting moved, Brandon Ingram getting moved if they're really bad at the trade deadline. So that's the Eastern and Western Conference. I want to thank everybody that was listening in this semester. We will be back in January for more of the Beyond the Scoreboard and some more NBA talk. I can't wait for it. And I just want to thank RDSE for allowing me to have my show. And this has been Beyond the Scoreboard. I am your host, Michael Lyons.